Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. And this time we're really getting into the mind of Shahid Kapoor.
Oh, yeah. This interview he did with Raj Shamani was incredible.
Wow.
So insightful.
It's not your typical celebrity interview.
Not at all.
It's more than just, the glitz and glam. It's really about how his personal experiences kind of shaped him as an actor, and even just his whole worldview.
You can tell right away he's in a different headspace. Super open and reflective. Right from the start, he's talking about humility and how important that is to him. Especially in an industry like acting, where it's so easy to get caught up in ego.
Yeah, and he gives this example, too, that really stuck with me, about how even a simple act of kindness for his wife got twisted in the media.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
He's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
People were saying it was just for show because, Shahid Kapoor.
Right.
It really makes you think about the pressures of fame.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just the good stuff he shies away from. He's really open about failure, too.
Yeah.
And the way he talks about it now, it's like he's gone through this whole reframing process.
Totally.
He used to get so caught up in feeling like a victim, like things were happening to him.
Like he had no control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now it's all about growth.
Yeah, he's like, okay, what can I learn from this?
Right. How can I use this to become better?
And I think that's something we can all relate to.
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there. Those moments when you feel stuck or like you're failing.
He uses this great analogy about runners starting a race at different points on the track.
Yeah.
Some might have a head start, others are way behind.
But we're always comparing ourselves without even knowing the full story.
Exactly.
So it makes you question, what does success even mean?
Yeah. Are we measuring ourselves against others, or are we focused on our own progress?
Shahid's point is that real fulfillment comes from recognizing how far you've come.
I love this.
Not where you stand compared to everyone else.
And here's where it gets really interesting. He admits to feeling lesser than at times.
Wow.
Even with all his success.
Yeah, he doesn't go into specifics about what happened, but
Right.
It makes you wonder what goes on behind the scenes.
In that world.
Right.
Yeah. And it really challenges this perception that celebrities are immune to self-doubt.
Totally. Think about it. The pressure of early fame, the constant need to prove yourself. I'm sure lots of people at the top of their fields feel that it's not just actors.
And this is where his childhood comes in.
Okay.
He has this belief that by the time we're 7, 90% of our personality is already formed.
That's bold.
I know, right?
But think about it, though. Early attachment. The bonds we form with our parents. Those have a huge impact on how we develop emotionally. Our sense of self. How we relate to people throughout our lives.
And for Shahid, who grew up with separated parents, he didn't have much of a relationship with his dad early on.
Right. So those early experiences must have been really formative.
I'm sure. And it makes you wonder how much those relationships maybe influenced his career choices, his need for validation, even his approach to parenting now that he's a father.
It's like becoming a parent makes you reevaluate your own upbringing. You start to see the patterns, things that shaped you.
Right.
And then you wonder how that's affecting your own kids.
He does talk about these joyful, simpler memories from his childhood, too. Like his grandfather walking him to school every day, rain or shine. It was clearly a really grounding, loving presence in his life.
And it's so true. Sometimes it's not the grand gestures.
It's the little things.
Yeah, those consistent acts of love and support.
It reminds me of my grandfather teaching me to swim. I was terrified of the water, but he was determined.
Oh!
Those little things become such a big part of who we are.
I think for Shahid, having that stability from his grandfather must have been especially important with his father being absent for so much of his childhood.
He does mention reconnecting with his father later in life, which I think speaks to that human need for connection. We all want that sense of belonging.
And family relationships are complicated.
Oh, yeah.
We're always evolving in how we understand them and navigate them.
Something else that really struck me was how honest he was about struggling with self-doubt and comparing himself to others.
I know, right? Especially early in his career. He talks about it in a way that I don't think people would expect from someone so successful.
It's like a reminder that confidence isn't just something you have. You build it.
Over time. Yeah, and even then.
Those doubts can creep back in.
Exactly. And his evolution in terms of fashion is a great example of that growth he's talking about.
Oh my gosh, I know, right?
Think back to some of his earlier style choices.
Oh, we don't have to go there.
Okay. Fair enough. But the point is, growth isn't always these massive transformations.
Right.
It's the small, consistent effort over time, whether it's Refining your personal style or your communication skills, or just learning to be kinder to yourself?
He's definitely come a long way.
He has.
And it seems like he's finally found a style that reflects who he is now.
Absolutely. And that's something we can all take away from this. Personal growth isn't about reaching some perfect endpoint. It's about enjoying the journey and becoming more aligned with our true selves along the way.
His parenting style is fascinating, too. He describes this balance between structure and freedom.
Oh, yeah, where he's the softer parent and Mira's a bit stricter.
Which is interesting because it doesn't quite match his intense on-screen persona.
Right. It makes you wonder if it's a reaction to his own childhood. Maybe wanting to provide that security and unconditional support that he didn't always feel.
He uses this term soft fall, which basically means creating a safe space for his kids to make mistakes.
So they can stumble, but they know they have a safety net.
But don't get it twisted. He's still super clear about the values he wants to instill in them.
Like hard work, earning your own success, not relying on privilege.
He uses those great examples from sports like Ronaldo and Messi.
Right.
He wants his kids to see the whole picture. Yeah. The struggles, the failures, the sheer determination.
Not just the highlight reel.
The brilliant way to make that point.
It is.
Now, his perspective on marriage is also super insightful. He debunks this myth of the perfect relationship and instead focuses on understanding acceptance and, above all, respect.
What's interesting is how modern their approach seems.
Totally.
They both emphasize individuality, having their own space to grow, even within a committed relationship.
And then there's this veto power concept.
Veto power.
I know it sounds a little strange at first.
It does.
But it's actually pretty clever. They each have specific areas where they have the final say, no matter what the other thinks.
So it's like a way to navigate those areas where they know they just have different perspectives.
Right. Or where one of them has more expertise.
So, for example, Mira often has the final say when it comes to the kids.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially since she's been more hands-on with their care because of Shahid's work schedule.
Right. It's about recognizing who's closer to the situation.
And on the flip side, Shahid has veto power over things like cars.
Really?
He even joked that even if it's Mira's car, he gets to choose.
That's hilarious.
I know, right?
But it shows how they've made this system work for them.
And I love that this whole interview feels so relatable.
Me too.
It shows that even a couple like Shahid and Mira, who are constantly in the public eye, they still have to figure out these everyday relationship dynamics.
It really humanizes them.
Absolutely.
And it's fascinating how this ties into his views on leadership. You know, he describes himself as a bit of a lone ranger.
Oh, really?
Someone who kind of forges his own path, not afraid of challenges.
Huh. Seems a little different from what he was saying before about humility and not getting caught up in power dynamics.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't have to be a contradiction, though. Maybe his approach to leadership is more about taking initiative, being decisive, but not needing to control others.
Right, so leading by example.
Exactly. He sees it as a way to empower himself, to face challenges head on, but not necessarily about having power over others.
He uses a cricket analogy, actually.
Oh, does he?
Yeah. He compares himself to an opening batsman, the one who's willing to take on the toughest bowlers right away.
I like that. That's a good one.
It really shows his courage.
Yeah, that willingness to step up and lead from the front.
But then he also talks about this protective side.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to his brother Ishan.
Ah.
He said if Ishan ever got into trouble, he'd be the first one there to defend him, even if it meant putting himself at risk.
That's so sweet.
I know.
It shows that underneath that Lone Ranger persona, there's this deep compassion.
Right. Like he'll go to any lengths for the people he loves.
Absolutely.
He even joked that if Ishan ever picked a fight, he'd be right there beside him, backing him up.
That's cute.
I know, right? So back to parenting for a second.
Yeah.
It's interesting how much thought he's put into his approach.
It seems like he really wants to strike that balance between setting boundaries and letting his kids make their own mistakes.
Yeah. He wants to instill values, but also give them space to grow.
Right. It's that classic parenting dilemma. How much do you guide them versus let them figure things out on their own?
Exactly. And he uses this analogy that I just love. He compares himself to those soft fall mats that gymnasts use.
Oh, like that.
So he's creating a safe space for his kids to experiment and take risks, but without serious consequences.
So they can fall, but they know they're not going to get hurt.
Exactly. It's not about letting them run wild. It's about understanding that mistakes are inevitable. And that's how we learn.
It's like that saying, you have to fall to know what it's like to get back up.
And he's adamant about his kids understanding the value of hard work.
Oh, for sure. He wants to prevent that sense of entitlement.
Yeah, just because he's successful doesn't mean his kids get a free pass.
He doesn't want them to think everything comes easy.
And he brings up Ronaldo and Messi again as examples.
Yes.
The Jew debate.
He wants his kids to see that even the best in the world got there through years of hard work and dedication.
And overcoming setbacks.
It's not just about the wins.
Right.
Now when he talks about his own growth and his struggle with self-doubt, it's really powerful.
It is. I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling, especially after facing rejection or criticism. You want to prove yourself.
Yeah, that need for validation is hard to shake. He mentions an incident where someone in the industry made him feel lesser than.
He doesn't go into detail.
Right, but it obviously had a big impact on him.
It makes you think about those moments where our self-worth is challenged.
Yeah, and how those experiences stick with us.
Even when we achieve success.
But what I find inspiring is that he doesn't dwell on it.
He doesn't.
He reframed his perspective and chose to see those challenges as opportunities.
He's like, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I grow?
Right. Instead of letting it define him, he used it as fuel.
He even uses this word survivor.
I love that.
It shows his resilience, his ability to navigate those tough situations and come out stronger.
It's a reminder that we all have that ability.
He used to give in to those external pressures, trying to be someone he wasn't.
I think we've all done that at some point.
But now he's reached this point where he's comfortable being himself.
Authentically Shahid.
And that's such an important realization.
It is.
It's about recognizing that you don't have to pretend to be someone you're not.
To be successful or accepted.
Yeah, in fact, being authentic is what truly allows you to shine.
He even compares it to wearing uncomfortable clothing.
Oh, I get that.
It's like trying to fit into a mold that doesn't suit you.
Draining.
Exhausted.
Just he's all about self-love now.
Yes, embracing those imperfections.
He used to struggle with it, but he's learned to accept himself, celebrate his strengths.
And he actually references that famous line from Jab We Met, main apney favorite Hoon.
I am my own favorite.
It's such a powerful affirmation.
It is.
And so needed in a world where we're constantly bombarded with images of perfection.
Right. We forget to appreciate our own unique beauty.
What I love is that he connects self-love to loving others.
It's like this ripple effect. When you love yourself, you can love others more fully.
Exactly. You approach relationships from a place of generosity and acceptance.
Not neediness.
He admits he used to compare himself to others a lot, especially early in his career.
That's so common, though.
It is.
It's easy to focus on what other people have that you don't.
And feel inadequate.
But he's learned that comparison is a waste of energy.
It is.
It's so much more fulfilling to focus on your own path.
I think what makes Shahid so engaging in this interview is his honesty.
Yeah, he's so open and vulnerable.
He's not pretending to have it all figured out. He's just sharing his journey.
And that's what makes it so relatable and inspiring.
Absolutely. He even talks about emotional labor, that often invisible work that usually falls on women in relationships.
Yeah, and he recognizes that Mira carries a lot of that weight in their marriage.
Which is huge for a guy to acknowledge. You know, it shows he's willing to challenge those traditional gender roles.
And appreciate what women bring to the table.
Absolutely.
Even if it's behind the scenes.
He seems to be actively working on being more aware of that dynamic.
Making sure the emotional labor is more balanced.
Exactly, which is so important.
It is, because that stuff can be really draining, even if you don't realize it's happening.
He also talks about giving each other space to grow.
Oh, yeah, that seems key for them.
They both have busy careers, their own passions. They seem to get that for their marriage to work. They need to support each other's individual growth.
And not hold each other back.
Right? Give each other freedom.
And they have this veto power system.
Right, where they each get the final say in certain areas.
It sounds a little strange.
I know, but it's actually pretty smart.
It ensures they both feel heard and respected.
Especially when they have different opinions.
So like Shahid said, Mira usually makes the final call about the kids.
Which makes sense. She's more hands-on right now.
And Shahid has veto power over things like cars.
Even if it's Mira's car, he gets to decide.
He joked about that.
Of course he did.
But it shows they're willing to compromise, respect each other's boundaries.
They've figured out a system that works for them.
And I love how open they are about the realities of marriage.
It's refreshing.
They're not trying to paint this perfect picture.
Right. They're acknowledging the work it takes.
The compromises, the ups and downs.
Which makes them so relatable.
You know, throughout this whole interview, I'm struck by Shahid's honesty. He's so open about his struggles.
And he seems to be actively working on himself.
On his relationships.
With his part.
He's using his platform to share his experiences and encourage others.
To embrace their own journeys.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
I think Shahid's story reminds us that we all have our own paths.
And they're rarely easy.
Right? There will be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt.
But it's about embracing those experiences.
Learning from them, growing from them.
He encourages us to be humble.
To choose love over power.
And to find those connections that make life meaningful.
He also reminds us to be kind to ourselves.
To accept ourselves for who we are.
Flaws and all.
So on that note, I want to leave you with a final thought. Think about the experiences that have shaped you.
The moments, the relationships that have made you who you are today.
What are those core values and beliefs that guide your life?
It's something to reflect on.
And if you want to hear more from Shahid, definitely check out the full interview with Raj Shamani.
It's a conversation that will stay with you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next week with another amazing guest. Until then, keep learning, keep growing.
And keep being your amazing selves.